Imagine a massive factory claims their environmental record is absolutely flawless. I mean perfection. How do you actually prove they're protecting the environment and not just putting on a really great PR show? Well, you don't use gut feelings. You put on your detective hat and you start looking for the only currency that actually matters: verifiable facts.
Welcome to this explainer. I was just digging into Module 29, Chapter 1 of the ISO 14001-2026 Lead Auditor Practice, and I have to say, the high-stakes world of environmental auditing is completely fascinating. Today, we are going to unpack exactly how professional auditors hunt down the evidence to see if an environmental management system is actually working or if it's just a paper tiger. Here is our roadmap for today's deep dive. We'll start with the foundation of objective evidence, move right into triangulation and evidence collection, break down smart sampling strategies, and finish up with evidence sufficiency and reliability. Let's jump right into Section 1, the foundation, objective evidence. This is where we establish the absolute baseline of truth.
Before an auditor makes a single judgment call, they need objective evidence. And this isn't an opinion, a guess, or a feeling. We are talking about verifiable information based entirely on observable facts. Basically, if another auditor walked into that exact same facility tomorrow, they should be able to look at the exact same information and reach the exact same conclusion. It's all about reproducible reality.
Because there is a massive difference between what's written down and what's actually happening, right? You might be holding a digital tablet that displays a flawless, meticulously documented waste management policy, but objective evidence demands you look up from that screen and check the physical reality on the factory floor. A perfect corporate policy means absolutely nothing if the actual hazardous waste bins right in front of you are overflowing or if physical waste segregation processes are being completely ignored by the staff.
So where do we actually find this evidence? It literally lives everywhere. An auditor has to connect the boardroom's high-level strategy directly to the factory floor's messy reality. We are digging into strategic planning documents, operational control records, environmental monitoring systems, direct physical observations, and of course, employee interviews. If leadership commits to reducing water usage, we need to trace that commitment all the way down to the physical water meters and the daily habits of the floor operators.
Which brings us to Section 2, triangulation and evidence collection. Let's look at the toolkit used to gather this proof.
To get the real story, auditors rely on a highly effective three-pronged approach. They review documents and digital logs, they interview the actual personnel doing the work, and they physically observe the operational processes in real time. It's really about gathering totally different perspectives on the exact same process.
And this introduces the absolutely crucial concept of triangulation. Say you review an employee's training record and it says they are fully trained in hazardous waste disposal. Then you interview that same employee and they correctly describe the emergency response protocol. Finally, you observe them physically segregating waste properly on the factory floor. Boom, you have triangulated the truth. When all three sources of evidence align perfectly, you have solid, undeniable proof that the environmental controls are actually effective.
Once triangulated, these facts face the ultimate high-stakes checklist, the audit criteria. This means physically inspecting pollution control equipment, checking if the monitoring devices are properly calibrated, and even reading through management meeting minutes to see if leadership actually cares and is actively engaged. The criteria represent the uncompromising benchmark of conformity.
But here is the detective's dilemma. You can't possibly audit every single record in a massive, global manufacturing facility. There simply isn't enough time. So we enter Section 3, Smart Sampling Strategies.
An auditor must sample smartly to ensure their findings actually represent the whole system. They have a few tools for this. They might use judgmental sampling, relying on their expert gut instinct to target specific risks, or random sampling to completely strip away human bias. Stratified sampling lets them check specific categories, making sure they review records from every single department. And systematic sampling checks at defined intervals, like pulling monitoring data from the first week of every month to spot hidden trends.
All of this really comes together under risk-based sampling, because you wouldn't split your time equally across the board, would you? It makes complete sense to dedicate roughly 70% of your effort to high-risk impacts, things like wastewater discharge, chemical storage, or air emissions, and maybe only 30% to low-risk administrative paperwork. Simply put, you hunt where the danger is. You direct your resources to where failures could cause actual environmental harm or massive regulatory penalties.
Because of this, determining the actual sample size is critical.
High-risk areas require a magnifying glass and a much, much larger sample size. If you are auditing something highly sensitive like hazardous waste disposal, you don't just look at one single manifest. You look at multiple manifests across different months, you verify contractor certifications, and you comb through regulatory reporting records. The higher the environmental risk and legal exposure, the deeper you dig.
But auditors have to constantly watch out for sampling bias. Human nature means facility management will gladly hand you a pre-filtered, perfectly compliant stack of their best records. It's a nice gesture for sure, but an auditor has to maintain strict independence. They must select the evidence themselves to find out what's really going on, ensuring it accurately represents the true performance of the system, not just the absolute best-case scenario.
And that brings us to our final phase, the ultimate test of our gathered evidence. Section 4, Evidence Sufficiency and Reliability.
To make a bulletproof, defensible conclusion, the evidence has to pass two incredibly strict tests. First, sufficiency. Do we actually have enough data? Is the coverage complete? Second, reliability. Is the data trustworthy and authentic? You absolutely need both. A massive pile of inaccurate data is entirely useless, but on the flip side, one highly accurate, perfect data point isn't enough to prove an entire factory is operating safely.
Sufficiency also means surviving the test of time. A facility might run beautifully on a Tuesday afternoon, but what about the graveyard shift, or the dead of winter versus a peak summer heat wave? Environmental performance can vary wildly based on the time and conditions. Sufficient evidence proves sustained performance over time, not just a lucky, isolated snapshot. When evaluating reliability, auditors use a hierarchy of credibility. The absolute gold standard at the very top: direct physical observation. Seeing that physical waste segregation happen in real time is the absolute strongest proof you can get. Next down is calibrated quantitative data, like lab results. Third is controlled historical documents. And finally, corroborated interview statements. Interviews are fantastic for context, but they must be backed up by the higher tiers of evidence. Now, today, modern facilities are making this a lot easier. Automated data capture, digital audit trails, and enterprise software dashboards dramatically boost the reliability and traceability of data. When an auditor on the floor can look at their digital tablet and instantly trace real-time wastewater metrics directly back to a calibrated sensor, human error is drastically reduced, and the reliability of that objective evidence just skyrockets. This brings us to a really powerful takeaway from the ISO text itself. Objective evidence represents the cornerstone of ISO 14126 audit effectiveness, credibility, and reliability. Without it, an audit is just a polite conversation. With it, an audit is a factual, defensible evaluation that genuinely ensures environmental compliance and continuous improvement. So, I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. Think about your own organization's operations for a second. If an ISO 14001 lead auditor walked into your facility today, totally bypassed the polished policy manuals, and triangulated your data across all shifts and all departments, would your environmental controls truly stand up to the ultimate test of objective evidence? It's a critical question every focused learner and leader needs to ask themselves. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning the evidence.